Welcome back. 8 Palestinians have been killed in fresh Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Palestine's health ministry says Tel Aviv's airstrikes and shelling have killed 18 Palestinians in the past 24 hours. Witnesses say Tel Aviv has also started amassing troops along the Gaza border. In a statement, the Palestinian government said that Israel has hit Gaza with 22 airstrikes and 10 artillery shells since Tuesday. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh has rather told Israel to immediately stop its aggression against Gaza. Accusing Israeli politicians of using conflict to end the political deadlock, he said Palestinian blood is being used as an electoral card. 7 people have been killed and 7 others wounded in a car bomb explosion near the Interior Ministry in the Afghan capital Kabul. Interior Ministry spokesperson Nasrud Rahimi says the blast occurred in the Kabul's Qasba area. The spokesperson said the targeted area has not yet been cleared. Witnesses say the blast also damaged vehicles in the area. No one has yet claimed the responsibility. Head of Indian-occupied Kashmir's Hurriyat Conference, Sayyid Ali Gilani, has thanked Pakistan for highlighting Kashmir crisis globally. In a letter to Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, Gilani said this may be his last communication because of his worsening health. Gilani said Imran Khan's speech at the UNGA for oppressed people of occupied Kashmir is praiseworthy. He said the Indian occupation forces continue molestation, sexual harassment, and even sodomy to subjugate Kashmiris. He said Indian troops are now grabbing Kashmiris' lands following the Israeli forces. Gilani said Muslims of Ladakh have also been left at the mercy of brutal Indian forces because they rejected New Delhi's annexation. He urged PM Khan to take action and end all the diplomatic ties and arrangements with India after its illegal actions in the valley. Gagging press freedom further, India has denied internet access to international journalists reporting from occupied Kashmir. Authorities have banned the freelancers and web journalists from the Srinagar Media Center. The media center is the only place where journalists have internet amid total communications blackout in the valley. Journalists say they have to stand in queues for hours for a chance to file their stories. Journalist Akash Hassan said he is leaving the center, calling this development another humiliation for local journalists. Yesterday, journalists held a protest against India-imposed clampdown and communication blackout for the past 100 days. In Washington, a U.S. Congress caucus is set to hold a hearing on the crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir tomorrow. In a statement, the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission said there are persistent reports of human rights violations in the valley. The commission expressed concern at the excessive use of force by occupation forces, communications blackout, and illegal arrests of Kashmiri politicians. It said witnesses will testify about the human rights situation and will offer recommendations for action by Congress. The witnesses will include human rights activist Arjun Sethi, Salah Asai, Human Rights Watch official John Sifton, and Ohio University professor Hallie Duchinsky. The hearing will be hosted by Congressmen James McGovern and Christopher Smith. Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan has arrived in Washington for a 2-day visit to meet U.S. President Donald Trump. Erdogan says Turkey's military operation in northern Syria will be on the agenda of the meeting. Ahead of his visit, Erdogan accused Washington of not fulfilling its commitment of vacating Kurdish forces from Turkey's bordering areas. Meanwhile, Trump has not expressed any intention of ending its alliance with the SDF. Last month, Trump pulled back the U.S. troop from northeast Syria, parting ways with the Kurdish forces. But later, he joined forces with the SDF to guard Syrian oil installations from getting into ISIS hands. Iraq has indefinitely postponed all the provincial council elections without citing any reason. This came after the US called on Baghdad to stop using violence against protesters and hold early elections. Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi's media office said the decision was taken by the cabinet. Iraqi High Commission for Human Rights says over 300 protesters have been killed in anti-government demonstrations. Mahdi has refused to step down but has called for major electoral and constitutional reforms to address public grievances. A protester has been shot dead and another injured in Beirut after the army opened fire using live ammunition to disperse an anti-corruption protest. It is the second death during the ongoing nationwide unrest that has largely been peaceful. The army says it arrested a soldier who opened fire at demonstrators in the coastal town of Khalidi. Walid Jumalat-led Progressive Socialist Party said the victim is one of the members but urged supporters to stay calm. Earlier, Lebanese President Michel Aoun proposed a government comprising technocrats and politicians. The UN has urged Lebanon to accelerate the formation of a new government. Hong Kong's police say the territory is on the brink of a total breakdown. They say the protesters are committing what they call insane acts. Authorities say rioters have set up roadblocks and are destroying public transport facilities. The Education Bureau has shut down schools with transport paralyzed and growing safety concerns amid violent protests. Announcing the suspension, Hong Kong's Education Bureau also urged the protesters to stop violent acts. But anti-government protesters have pledged to stick with their new strategy of weekday violence. The hospital authority says 81 people have been injured in the last 24 hours. For the third straight day, the city is witnessing its worst violence in over 5 months of protests. A university student has blown himself up outside police headquarters in the Indonesian city of Medan. Police say 6 people were injured in the blast. A police spokesperson says the student was a lone wolf suicide bomber. He said authorities are still investigating whether he had links to any militant groups. Investigators say 5 police officers and a civilian were injured, while several vehicles were also damaged. Indonesia's Anti-Terrorism Squad's Special Detachment 88 is collaborating with the police to further investigate the incident. "19 people have died and 25 were injured when a bus plunged into a ravine in northern Peru. Police say the gorge was almost 300 meters deep. According to police, the tragedy at La Libertad was probably caused by dense fog in the area. They say the bus was traveling from the town of Cilianca to Trujillo. The wounded have been transferred to health centers in Trujillo. Peru's highways are the site of frequent accidents because of weather conditions in the Andes. In Australia, more than 70 fires are still burning across New South Wales and 61 in Queensland. Conditions have eased from the catastrophic danger ratings in New South Wales earlier, but Queensland has worsened.
The hot, dry continent of Australia has long experience with bushfires. But scientists say climate change is magnifying extreme weather conditions. The threat in New South Wales has been downgraded from catastrophic, but officials urge residents to remain vigilant. 21 people have been injured in New South Wales. 13 of these are firefighters. Officials say 50 houses have been destroyed or damaged in the state. At one point, fires broke out in the suburbs of Sydney. Further north, Queensland is expected to face dangerous wind changes today. 14 homes have been destroyed, 13 in the Cobra Ball fire near Yeppoon. Meanwhile, the waterbombing helicopter crashed in the northern state. The Queensland Ambulance Service is calling it a heavy landing and says the pilot has minor injuries.
The British Prime Minister has announced more support for communities affected by flooding in northern England. 100 army personnel will be deployed to support recovery efforts in South Yorkshire. Boris Johnson made the commitment following a meeting of the government's Emergency Cobra Committee. Johnson faced criticism from Labour and the Liberal Democrats, who said he should declare a national emergency. Over a month's worth of rain fell on parts of northern England in less than 24 hours last Thursday. It prompted flooding that killed a woman who was swept away and forced some people to leave their homes. Venice has been hit by the second highest tide in its recorded history. Seasonal high tides, dubbed Aqua Alta, are just 7 centimeters short of the record flood of 1966. Authorities say the tide peaked at 187 centimeters around 11 p.m. local time. Venice's historic St. Mark's Basilica, public squares and alleyways are deep underwater. Mayor Luigi Boriniaro says he will declare a state of emergency and asked Rome for help. Boriniaro also said the tide is the result of climate change. Flooding in Venice during this season is normal, but recent trends highlight an abnormal rise in sea levels. In the United States, police are training teachers to fight back mass shooters with guns of their own. Proponents of the strategy say it makes schools a harder target for would-be attackers. Others feel classrooms should remain gun-free, and increased gun control is the only way to tackle the problem. This report has the details.
School shootings have been a growing problem in the United States since the Columbine High School massacre in 1999. In 2018, there were 113 casualties and incidents of on-campus gun violence. In Shelby County, Ohio, one school is trying to fight back by arming its teachers.
I've always felt that school districts were a soft target, and I've always felt like that if you made it a harder target, then crazy people that want to go do stuff like that.
15 U.S. states have approved similar setups, but many U.S. citizens feel educators shouldn't be armed. Others say teachers with guns can keep both students and American gun freedoms safe.
If you come here and you want to hurt somebody, you need two things. You need a will, and you need to be in good graces with God, because you're going to need them both.
But it remains to be seen if the measure will be effective. Most school shooters eventually turn their guns on themselves or let the cops do their job for them, meaning they're not afraid of being shot. But it seems this is the best protection the US has to offer its children right now.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus. Welcome back. The sea off the coast of Mexico is losing its coral at an alarming rate to a little understood disease. More than 30% of the coastline's coral has been lost in less than a year. Scientists are racing to understand what causes the disease. This report has the details.
With its turquoise sea, white sand beaches, and breathtaking reds, yellows, and purples of the Mesoamerican reef, the Mexican Caribbean is like no other tourist spot in the world. But these beautiful sights are on the brink of extinction. The Caribbean corals are turning sickly white from a mysterious disease that calcifies and kills them. This illness is called stony coral tissue loss disease and was first detected near the Florida coast in 2014. Researchers are desperate to understand and fight the disease. The degradation is mainly caused by population growth on islands and the effects of climate change. One prime suspect is poor water quality caused by sewage and a recent surge of decomposing sargassum seaweed. Researchers are currently building up a DNA bank of the endangered corals, hoping they can one day bring them back from the brink of extinction in the wild if needed.
The London Transport Museum has organized tours in the city's abandoned underground stations, once used as a refuge in World War II. The exhibition reveals the top-secret bunkers used to protect people such as then Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill. This report has the details.
Go this way, through there.
In between platforms of the Piccadilly Circus tube station lies a secret passage to London's past. It's been 90 years since these dark, dusty tunnels last saw any travelers, but since August, the London Transport Museum has reopened them for tours. These visitors get a chance to discover the insides of the world's oldest underground system.
Piccadilly Circus, being Piccadilly Circus and sort of the heart of London, was actually one of the most frequently used tube shelters during the Blitz and then later on the V-weapon attacks. So up to 7,000 people would shelter in the station per night.
On display are bunks used during the war, period posters and products. More surprising even, visitors can revisit a recreation of Winston Churchill's war cabinet, set up at the time inside Down Street Station as he awaited the construction of his bunker.
Here they showed him a really good time. They gave him great food, great drink from the railway hotels, and that really helped him during that period of the war when he was doing a lot of cocktail diplomacy with the war cabinet.
The abandoned parts of London's underground serve mainly today for storage or ventilation, like this huge cylinder which housed 2 elevators. And while most passengers would never suspect the second life of London's ghost stations, some may have seen them in movies. The Aldwych station, for example, was used in V for Vendetta and Battle of Britain.
With more than 1 billion slaughtered in 2018, Poland has become the leading European chicken producer and exporter in just 10 years. But the profits at all costs approach is alarming animal rights advocates. This report will tell you how.
These chicks may have only just hatched, but their days are already numbered, 42 to be exact. During their 6-week life cycle, their weight will increase at an astonishing rate, from just a few grams to nearly 3 kilos. Poland is Europe's leading poultry exporter. Last year, the country reared, slaughtered, and distributed more than 1 billion chickens. That's 10 times as many as a decade ago.
Our poultry doesn't just go to Europe, it also goes to the African and Asian markets, which makes Poland one of the world's market leaders.
On this farm in the north of Warsaw, 12 poultry houses are each home to 54,000 animals, meaning there are 23 chickens per square meter. Everything is automated, from the temperature of the hen house to the distribution of food and water. Each year, the farm goes through 6 chicken life cycles. Farmers acknowledge the use of antibiotics, but argue their use is carefully monitored and not systematic.
When there are problems, in the vast majority of cases, they are digestive disorders. There is no risk to the consumer.
On day 42, the chickens leave the factory for the first time and are taken to the slaughterhouse. The facility in Ujazdowek processes 750,000 chickens per day. The animals are killed, plucked, cut up, and finally packaged.
Alibaba Group's application to sell $15 billion of new shares has been approved by Hong Kong Stock Exchange. The secondary listing would reinstate Hong Kong as the world's fundraising capital for the 7th time in 11 years. China International Capital Corporation and Credit Suisse have been appointed lead arrangers of Alibaba's Hong Kong offering. The secondary listing will bolster the capitalization of Alibaba, Asia's most valuable company. Alibaba already holds the world record for the largest global initial public offering. Stock markets across Europe are trading lower after US President Donald Trump reiterated his tough stance on trade talks with China. Escalating political unrest in Hong Kong is also weighing on investors' confidence. London's FTSE 100 index has picked up 0.5% lower amid a decline by banking and other trade-sensitive stocks. Frankfurt's DAX has also lost a fraction, despite gains 3% by market heavyweights Bashale and Joche Wonhan. The Hang Seng Index led losses in Asia, closed down nearly 2% lower as Hong Kong's encountered the worst violence in weeks. Tokyo's Nikkei 225, the Kospi in Seoul and Sydney ASX 200 all lost nearly 1%. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.